D-Mays, Fingen and Donick, presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Welcome into our Tuesday show. Willie Donick, Derek Mason here with you. Adam Vingen continues his vacation. But we did hear from Adam this morning. He has contributed to the show from afar.
Yes. You knew it was a matter of time.
It was just a matter of time.
Yeah,
I think the over-under was probably today.
A day? Yeah, a day or two.
Right around like mid-show today. So, yep.
We didn't count the weekend because we're not working. But
right.
The minute we get back to working on Monday, the over-under was a day and day and a half, and we got it.
We got it.
Yeah.
And there was an incredibly sad story in Manhattan yesterday, and there was I guess you could call it, I mean, there's no good story when it comes to the latest mass shooting, and we know all too well in our city that it can happen anywhere. And so in Midtown Manhattan, but the sports angle, and this is something that Adam shared with us in case we hadn't seen it, is the shooter. He was targeting the NFL offices because he has, who knows what goes on in the mind of, a madman like that. But he was the dangers of football.
I was trying to, because the story is now starting to form that there's a potential grievance with the NFL in regards to CTE.
Right.
There's a 27-year-old young man. And did he play in the NFL?
No, he did not. He played high school football.
Yeah, that's the part that is sort of disconnecting. Unless he has a family member or something he may that played in the NFL and succumbed to CTE. Maybe that's the angle, but high school, I mean, you have to really weave a serious sort of knot or string to attach high school football to the NFL, because there's listen, I don't.
But he was mentally ill.
Yeah, it was something. Yeah.
So the note that they found, he had tied his mental illness to, I think I have CTE. Of course, nobody knows if you have CTE until after you're passed, and you can analyze the brain, right? Yeah. You can think you might, but he tied all of this together. And decided to go on go after the NFL, and he went to the wrong elevators, but still, obviously, he killed 4 people at the end of the day, and it was extremely tragic and sad. And once again, here we are. It'll happen again some point. We don't know where, but we continue to not be able to curtail these enough with the type of weapon he had and all of that. Just the latest one. It's just awful.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, especially for those that have lost their lives, family members that now are grieving because of the lives lost. We only know one at this point. I don't think they released any other names. The police officer was the first victim, and I think that's the only thing they've released thus far. But there were 4 others, including the actual perpetrator. He took his own life, I believe.
Yes.
But it's unfortunate. And listen, people are going to debate this back and forth. And the only reason one reason we're talking about it because of the sports angle.
Right.
That's why
it's the number one story on any sports website you go to right now. So
absolutely.
We have to mention it.
So we're going to talk about it, but it's just, again, when you almost say when is enough, but it doesn't. It seems like whoever, and this may be controversial, but whoever are not making laws, they got an appetite for this stuff. That's the only way I can kind of rationalize it. You must have an appetite to watch this when it comes up, because if I don't have an appetite for something, I'm gonna make sure either I'm not engaged or I'm going to do something that curtails what is going on. And flat out is, some people have an appetite for this. And it's unfortunate, because we've for longest. Oh, we're praying for the family. We need to do this. We need to do that. But nothing really gets done but a lot of lip service. So either you have an appetite for it, you don't care, or because it hasn't affected you, you see it as just, hey, something that happens in the world.
And I know this, people will point to the fact that New York has among the toughest gun laws.
Exactly.
And this still happens there. So I think no matter what you do, some of this will still happen on some level. But I've always looked at it as if we could cut it down, if there are things that we can do to just cut the percentage down over time.
Yes.
That's what I would like to see. Exactly. And I think there's more that we can do sensibly.
Absolutely.
But here we are.
But yeah, we're bringing it up because it has a sports angle. So that's why we're bringing it up, people.
So now let's get to you and I both got a chance to go to the Titans practice, the first practice in pads. And so that's going to be the big subject of our show today. I hope people got a chance to hear Sebastian Joseph Day on with Chase and Big Joe. That was
a potty mouth.
Oh, they had to really push the dump button on him, didn't they?
Well,
just a little, just
a few times. He might have set a record for most in one interview, and it was a great interview. He's a really sharp guy. He's an impressive guy. And it's interesting they had a defensive player on because D-Mace, without trying to bury the headline, the defense was good today, but the headline we know is going to be Cam Ward had a day that was a struggle. There's no way around it. If you thought that every day was going to go super smooth, despite everything everybody likes about him, you're wrong. And this was a reminder of that. He struggled mightily today, and hopefully in the big picture, it will help him.
Yeah. And, I was talking with TD, and this was probably in the middle of practice. Well, toward the latter part of practice when I said it, but he and I had been standing there watching some of the team drills and in 707. And I turned to him and I just said, man, he's just having a rookie day. That's what he's having. He's having a rookie day. Unfortunately, it's the first day of pads. Defense usually typically has the edge in the first day of pads, but there seemed to be some miscommunication with he and his receivers. The timing was off. And I said to you at one point, Willie, I said, and you summed it up well. I was trying to figure out, I'm like, he just doesn't seem like his throws are, and then you say there's no conviction behind his throws. And I was like, you're right. Like there's not.
It wasn't decisive.
Exactly.
And he was way off target on a lot of, and he tried to make some difficult throws.
Yeah, he
did. Today they were attacking down the field. Even I noticed when they were doing the shell with no defense.
Yes.
He threw a lot of deep. Yes, they were working on it. So, you're not going to complete. We just had the discussion last week with Adam about when somebody puts in the stats and so went 9 for 9. That usually doesn't come on a day where they're throwing the ball down the field. He was trying to make some difficult throws. But that being said, his success rate was very low today. And there were some interceptions, and it seemed to unravel towards the end of practice. By my observation, the last team drill where it was, 11 on 11, he threw a couple of picks, and there were just wild throws. One was the guy around, was not on the same page. He cut one way, the throw went the other, and it looked bad. So I don't know whose fault that was, but it just didn't look good. And you're going to have days like this for sure. So how they handle it will be the important thing.
Well, how they show up tomorrow will be extremely important because, listen, again, I'm not making excuses for the Titans, and I'm not going to sit here and try to paint a rosy picture. It wasn't good, but just because it wasn't good doesn't mean that now from this point on, this ship is going down. That's not
right.
the case,
that's how we have to avoid the wild sways.
Absolutely.
In just being able to watch a practice.
Absolutely.
Because it's easy to get caught up in that.
You got to know that, because Willie mentioned it. Today, it was an emphasis, I believe, on pushing the ball down the field, trying to get the ball down the field, having pads on, getting more of a realistic view of what Cam is going to see or what the offensive line is going to see. So let's try to push the ball downfield because we can hold on to the block a little bit longer because we have on pads. So it seemed like there was a concerted effort to push the ball down the field by all means. And there were times where Cam was off, whether it be underthrown or overthrown. Now, he made some good throws in the midst of all of that too, but it seemed like he was half a tick slow at times. And it doesn't seem, again, rookie day, they need to do better, but it doesn't seem like it seems like he still was in college mode where he was a little late. He was late on things, and things were not clicking fast for him. It's like he was reading everything just a tad bit too slow on several situations where I thought he should have got to the backside quicker. But today just seemed like he was processing all of what they were doing up front. He was doing that, and what it was doing, it was slowing him down in his progression. He has to get better at that, but I think he will. Again, he was having a rookie day, and it didn't look good. But your players got to help you. Your veterans got to help you. And there were times where veteran guys, tight ends, didn't help in certain situations. But then there were times where Cam Ward just needs to make a better throw.
I think you hit on one thing that, again, who I'm only observing. I don't know what the plays are. I don't know how the plays work. I'm just watching. But when you heard, and Dan Orlovsky made this point over the weekend, or at some point on the Inside the NFL, what they were looking for with Cam Ward. He was on a panel with Louis Riddick, and they were talking about playing quick. Mm-hmm. You talk about it all the time, getting the ball out quick. Teron talks about it all the time. And today I thought that was a big thing, was the timing. And one thing Sebastian Joseph Day talked about with Chase and Joe is Denard Walker. This is now the second year he's running that defense, and they are throwing some stuff at him, and he's a rookie quarterback, and it's not super easy. So that's a factor. But I saw several plays where, he held the ball, right? And it doesn't look like the timing was crisp. And we have to remind ourselves, this is a rookie in his first padded practice in the NFL. But those type of things can be a good wake-up call, I think, in the long run, if you realize how far you need to go. And I think from everything we've been told about Cam Ward, he's the type of guy who can take the criticism, take a day like this in stride, and learn from it. But there's no doubt that was, and you know what? It's good to struggle. Exactly. Don't you think? I mean, you want him to struggle a little bit. If you think everything's going to be easy all through preseason practice, you get the rude awakening when week one hits. You might want to have some rough practices.
Yeah, I mean, this is what practice is for, to, go out there and try new things, get timing down, find out what works, what doesn't, what the quarterback is comfortable with at this particular moment, what he's not, bring him along slowly. That's why I think that period, I tend to believe today's practice emphasize deep ball today, pushing the ball down the field. So with that being said, maybe you hold on to the ball a little bit longer. You try to do some things that are going to buy you some time just so you can push the ball down the field, or you're pushing the ball down the field regardless. And listen, you're going to have days like that where, maybe it doesn't work, but it doesn't work because this is what it's almost like you're intentionally doing this and trying to figure out what works, what doesn't. Well, it didn't look good today. Well, you come back this afternoon or tomorrow and you start it all over again and see if the offense has caught up with the defense, and see if Cam, because he's going to see these same looks again tomorrow. He's going to see them the same thing. So see if he can recognize them a lot earlier tomorrow or this afternoon.
I was going to ask you about how much in general, forget about the fact that you got a rookie quarterback and a lot of new guys on offense, but is the defense generally at this stage of practice ahead of the offense? Should we factor that in to trying to avoid panic right? Which a lot of people, we always overreact to certainly a preseason game, but even practice, and we shouldn't do that. But we do want to talk about it. Everybody wants to know what happened at practice. This is what happened at practice today. They were under the microscope. But is the defense generally ahead? Should they be ahead, and why?
Well, because for this reason, the defense, they can pin their ears back and they can get after the quarterback. And it's almost like, if one of those guys mess up on the front end, then regardless if a guy hit the wrong, hole or whatnot, I still may get pressure on the quarterback. So it's when the defense mess up, nobody really sees it unless there's a blown coverage on the back end.
Yeah.
When the offense mess up, everybody sees it right away because typically somebody's in the quarterback's face. Or there's an errant pass or an interception makes the quarterback release the ball a lot quicker. That's why typically on the first day, the defense usually had the upper hand because they're just rushing. They're pinning their ears back and they're just rushing. They're dropping in spots. Well, the offense got to figure all of this out. It's typically not until that second practice where things start to level themselves out. If they are, if your offense is worth anything, then the next practice will be a little bit better in regards to assignment. Right now, we're trying to, it's like chaos for the defense. Defense can be chaotic. Offense can't. So the defense in their chaoticness, if that's a word, cause confusion for the offensive line. So that's why I said that next practice, when they come back out, Cam should look better. The offensive line should recognize things a lot quicker. If he doesn't, then you got to go back to the drawing board. You got to go back to the lab and be able to read this stuff and identify it a lot quicker.
It's very early. Another thing that we saw that has been brought up, and this was the first practice I've been at, so I've heard about this, and I didn't want to make any prejudgments. But I do have to say, I would have liked to have seen it was an 8 a.m. practice, so it was a little cooler. It was a long practice, and you can tell that in this NFL, people are so much more conscious about your hydration level and how much sleep have you had and what are you eating and what's the post-practice routine and all of that. But not that I want to see old school and craziness and fights or anything like that. But I did think there was a little bit of a lack of pep, tempo, and energy. And it's got nothing to do with what they're doing at practice. It's how they're doing it. Did you see that?
Unfortunately, I said this before, first day of practice, and it seemed to have had some people scratching their heads like, what does he mean? The practice was, it was a good practice. So when I'm looking at practice, I may be looking at it from a different sort of vantage than someone else, or a different type of mentality or whatnot than somebody else, because there was no energy the first day of practice, and today there was not much energy there today.
Well, let's give an example. Usually, when the defense picks off a pass for a touchdown, the defense on the sideline goes crazy, right?
Yes.
I didn't really see that. They had one today.
Yeah,
right.
They had two. I think they had two.
Yeah. Like there was some, hey, all right, but it wasn't the like. There should be, I think. I don't know. Should, like, I'm not telling you how to. I'm not Vince Lombardi here, right? But in my observation, usually, especially the first day of pads, there's a little rivalry going on, offensive line versus. I'm not saying fights, but a little bit of, yeah, we got you on that one. You're a little. Way to go. You're cheering for, it's not trash talk. I'm not talking about that, but there's an energy, there's an enthusiasm, or there's at least a couple of guys on either side of the ball that are pepping up guys. And I just didn't see that much.
We've seen it, and I'm only basing it on previous years. Now, listen, maybe it's good that you don't have sort of that guy, because they've had it last two seasons and it ain't worked. The energy hadn't worked. So maybe doing something different is good for this team. But I'm used to this team there being a pop to this team. There being an energy throughout the whole practice, not energy here, energy there, energy throughout the whole practice. Well, frankly, that's because they had leaders, Byard, guys like that made sure the practice always had some type of energy. You had Henry and Tannehill and AJ and those guys on the other side of the ball. They made sure the practice always had energy. It doesn't seem the two practices that I've witnessed. And I brought it up because the first practice, man, there shouldn't have been a down moment in that practice. First day of practice, man. Just like a kid. Like when you step out on that field first day, man, that's a privilege. Like when you talk about the first day, you talk about the grass smelling, the dew on the grass when you first go out there. You're talking because it's exciting.
Adrenaline. There's an
it's
adrenaline.
Exciting. It wasn't there. And then the first day of pads, it's like, man, I get to really take out my aggression on somebody. Like, I'm going to show them that I can play. Or I'm going to show, he talked trash yesterday. Oh, I'm going to show him not at the pads on. I'm going to do it all legally within the rules, but I'm going to show him. It just wasn't that type of, and again, maybe I look at it different than what maybe the coaches thought they were energy and they were flying. But when you're just sitting and watching and you're not in it, maybe you recognize this. Maybe I recognize some things that I just think it should be a given. It wasn't there.
One thing I thought of too, and I don't want to overemphasize. This is just one thing that there were a lot of things I'm sure they felt like they got accomplished today. If I'm the defense, I'm pretty happy with how it went. They played pretty loud music for about D-Mace, about half the practice, right?
Yeah, that stuff is just.
And even during some team drills, like I from what I've seen most years, and I've watched Titans practices pretty much every year, the music usually is at the beginning of practice, the first 30 minutes or so, and then when you start getting into more intense drills, they stop it. And I found that a little curious, right? They were playing music well into some of the team stuff.
Yeah, and I'm sure I don't know how much they did that last year. I know they had a lot of music playing last year, but I'm not sure, if it was throughout the duration of practice or did they cut it off at one point, because you always want to have sort of that background music in a sense. So maybe that's just what they do, but yeah, that it almost drowned out practice. It just
and that's where I tried to say, am I not hearing the pep and the back and forth because the music is drowning me out? I did have that thought, and eventually the music stopped, but I still kind of felt the same way, that it wasn't as peppy as I would have liked to have seen. Enthusiasm, but look, it's one practice.
Yes, so I mean, you take it for what it's worth. But next practice in pads needs to be a lot better because you can excuse it today, what you saw and what happened. You can excuse it. And I know they're not excusing it, meaning the Titans offense. I'm sure they want to come out and do a much better job. So you can excuse it, but you can't have back-to-back days in pads where the offense looks lackluster. It didn't look like it had energy. There wasn't this sense of urgency to get to the huddle, get up and get going. And again, maybe some guys, there are just a lot of new guys and they're trying to figure some things out and I would say this: when you have a considerable amount of new faces, things may tend to run a little bit slower until you kind of get everything going. But man, you had mini camps, you had all this to kind of get that stuff sort of worked out before you get into camp. But I understand even in camp, you're still working out some of the kinks and you're still working out the flow of it. But I just wish there was more pep in the practice. I wish Callahan would just be like, stop, let's start this thing over. But I understand he can't do that based upon the new CBA rules. There's a lot of things you just say and do. Yeah. Coaches, I mean, Fish, John, they would start practice over again. Like, nah, this ain't going the way we want it to go. let's start it over again. And typically that gets everybody going.
Most of us have had that coach. You play for enough teams or coaches, even when you're young. Sometimes that's a tactic a coach has sometimes. When we come back, Tim Hasselbeck will join us. We'll get sort of his take on where things stand, how you handle these types of things. Talk a little NFL football with him. You're listening to DVD here on 102.5 The Game, and we're broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Back here on DVD, Willie Donick, Derek Mason here with you. First day of pads for the Titans. And Tim Hasselbeck is with us here on 102.5 The Game, head football coach, Ensworth Tigers. So I'm sure he's been doing some work on the gridiron, on the grass field, getting ready to go. Football is around the corner, of course. Analyst for ESPN's NFL coverage as well. Tim, how are you?
I'm doing great. Hey, I mean, here's the deal. Training camp at Austin Peay. You said first day of pads, Willie. I thought you were talking about Ensworth. Actually, second day of pads. Okay, second day of pads. Austin Peay, great facilities. Very thankful for their hospitality. Turf field.
Oh,
turf field.
Okay.
I need somebody to explain the science to me. I don't care how tight you tie your shoes. Those black pellets still end up in your shoes. Like somebody, like what is it? Like what? Like how does that happen?
They have a mind of their own. They're living beings. They just jump in your shoe, man. Then they don't want to get out.
Crazy. It's crazy.
It is crazy. And One of the things that, Tim, we told you we were doing this. We had the rewatched game from 1986, and it was at the Meadowlands on the hardest carpet. And maybe not the worst. Maybe Veterans Stadium would contend, but it's funny when they would do the update, the scores from another game. Invariably, it would be at another field that had just as bad a turf. How much better do you think they are? We're dealing with the pellets because it's better than the carpet, right?
I think so. And now, depending on where you go, it's like coconut in there, or
right.
some type of gluten-free sand or something like that that they have in there. At some of them now. But look, at somebody that played in college on on AstroTurf, like the actual AstroTurf. I believe. Listen, it's gotten better. Grass, I would say, is better than the field turf, but field turf certainly a step above that. Basically, the asphalt that we were playing on, back in those days.
So obviously, you're watching your own team. You're evaluating. Cam Ward, D. Mason, and I just got back from the practice. He clearly struggled today, and it's to be expected on some of the days. You'd love for him to have some big moments, but it looked clear to me that, as practice is going on, the swagger and the confidence was being tested some. So we've all been there, right? I'm sure you've had those types of practices. How do you try to battle through that, especially as a young player, when you just don't have your A game and you're not used to that?
Well, first off, I appreciate the delicate way you put that for me having gone through that. I did have a game with a 0 quarterback rating, so that was very generous of you, Willie. I appreciate it. Look, I think it's one of these things. I think everybody knows that you're going to have mistakes. So I was at the Commanders training camp on Sunday. Well, the Commanders training camp, one of the very first plays, Jaden Daniels throws a really bad interception that gets basically run back pretty far. Like, there are going to be mistakes. I don't care who you are, how good of a player you are. I think I don't think it's as difficult to respond from that. I think it's when you have the epically bad stuff, like the stuff where it's like, almost uncomfortable in the meeting room because you say, like, everybody knows it actually doesn't even need to be corrected because it's so bad. Like, those are the ones that are a challenge. And I think it takes a lot of that before you get a guy that just starts to lose his confidence. So, I don't think a bad day, I don't think, one bonehead decision, I don't think that does it. I think ultimately it ends up being one of these things where guys are looking around and just saying, look, this is not it. So I guess I say that all to say, probably too early to say, okay, hey, shook confidence, after a single practice.
We're talking with Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst and head coach of the Innsworth Tigers. Now, Tim, can you explain to our listeners, because this is sort of the tightrope that we got to walk when we're out at practice, describing practice, but describing it in a way where you're actually telling the viewers or the listeners what you're seeing, but trying to get them to understand that, hey, listen, it was the first day of pads. Typically when that happens, especially when you don't have a veteran quarterback, the defense tends to throw a lot of confusing things at the offense, which makes that young quarterback have to think. It's the second and third practice that I'm more concerned with, that if he hasn't picked it up then, or at least has shown that he's recognizing some things, then maybe we got to slow the development down just a little bit.
Yeah, and on top of the scenarios of what you're painting in terms of, what the team is experiencing. So you have a veteran-ish receiver, an experienced, at least, relatively, receiver get hurt. And so now you sign somebody off of the street. And so now everything kind of gets accelerated in terms of the receiver position. So again, only because it's fresh in my mind, being there Sunday at Commanders camp, no Terry McLaurin. So, I would think we all agree the Commanders receiver situation, is better than the Titans at the moment, even no Terry McLaurin. They had added Deebo Samuel. Luke McCaffrey's been in their system for a while. And so they were doing a red zone period. And look, there were struggles. And you think, well, this is a quarterback that was, in some ways in the MVP, discussion at times last year. They've upgraded at receiver, even without McLaurin, and there were still some struggles. So, yeah, there's no doubt about it that, some issues in terms of personnel early in camp, and then situations that maybe some of those younger players, quarterback and receiver, haven't, been in together, operating in before. Yeah, you can see some offensive struggle.
Now, also, Tim, explain to our listeners, because what I explained to Willie, it seems like there was an emphasis on, deep balls today. And when you have an emphasis on deep balls, sometimes you're going to run the play no matter what, and you're going to make the throw no matter what, because you just want to get a true picture of what's going on. And sometimes that may end up, to others looking like, man, why did he make that throw? Why are they doing this? Why is he holding on to the ball? Maybe that he's holding on to the ball because there's an emphasis on trying to push the ball down the field as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that there are definitely times in a camp where, a coaching staff will look at the team and say, you know what, like, I don't know that we are, how well we're doing this. And so we're going to major in this in today's practice because we want to see, if guys will, perform well, in this environment. So, like, even an example, like I said, App State's spring practice, and I was talking to their head coach, and they were running a bunch of inside zone. It was just like, look, we need to get better at running inside zone. And he's like, the shame of it was based on what our defense is doing today. It's going to feel like we're just slamming our head against a cement wall because they're not really the best looks for us to run those runs against. But we need to invest in, is this going to be a good run for us? Can we call this? And so no differently with saying, all right, we got this receiver group. We know we need to be able to make explosive plays. We need to find out on some of these 50-50 balls, some of these opportunities to track the ball down the field, make contested catches. Do we have guys currently on our roster that can do that? And so, yeah, today, quarterbacks, look, if it's close, we're giving the guys the opportunity to get their hands on the football. Let's do that. So, yeah, you're right. Sometimes, if you don't know that that's what the point of emphasis is, you can wonder, man, why does he keep throwing up contested passes on go routes? Well, maybe there's a reason behind it.
Tim, quickly before we get you out of here, I was having a few discussions with some individuals on the sideline, and I got asked the question, well, how does this team, realistically, how is this team? And I explained it in this way. I said, listen, if they just go 27 deep, 11 on offense, 11 on defense, and then a couple of guys here and there, if they can stay healthy 27 deep with their top end, then I think they can compete. And I'm not saying, this is a playoff team or anything else, but I think it gives them a better shot at competing and winning some games that maybe we didn't think they were going to win. But if this team gets hurt, if they start to have injuries like they had before, this team is not deep enough to overcome any injuries, I believe, to their starting unit.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And in fairness to the team, look, if Dallas, had a few injuries, like they don't have the depth. Look, and you look at what happened to the Chiefs a year ago. They had an issue at left tackle. They had to move a guard to tackle. And, ultimately that was a big, big problem for them. So I do think that there are teams where you can feel like that's the case. Now, I will say, and this is the time of year for optimism and all of that. But again, to bring it back to the Commanders, they were not a deep or very good team a year ago. They were not deep at wide receiver a year ago, really, outside of McLaurin, some journeyman guys. But, because the quarterback was right, the hope and trajectory of where they feel the very next year are completely different. Like the optimism there, because of one person, changed the way they handled the offseason. It's why you go get Deebo Samuel. It's why you invested in the offensive line the way they did. And so I think that's really what you want to do. You like give us the hope, Cam. Like give us the hope. Make the guys around you better. and then we'll step on the gas while you're on your rookie contract.
Tim, one more quick one. It's been sort of a running theme, and again, it's only been a couple of practices, but it does seem like for the Titans, there hasn't been a huge amount of enthusiasm, energy, and we're not talking about fights or trash talk, but there's an energy at a practice that you were kind of looking for, especially with the first padded practice. So when you're running a practice, how do you try to create that as a coaching staff? Who do you look to do it? And if you're not seeing it, what do you do?
Yeah, so I think the way you do it is competitive periods. So situations, when you're talking about, in the NFL, you're creating situations so it's competitive, red zone, third down, stuff like that. You try to do it. It's one of the reasons people have open practices. So, where you position those periods in the practice, so the big guys aren't just completely shot by that point. So I think there are a bunch of different ways. Also, how you watch those competitive periods in film review as a team, as a staff, where guys know, listen, everybody saw it, both sides of the ball. I think those things can lead to more competitive, spirited practices. Now, I will say this: somebody said we've got like a heat dome or something hitting the United States. So, again, Commanders practice, beating the drum here, but it was they must have had 6,000 people there. There's a buzz there. It was fans were cheering. The start of practice was really incredible, and I think all of them would admit they fell apart by the end. In this heat, early on, especially if you have some veteran players, things like that, it just maintaining it is really difficult. So I do think that's where for coaches, how much you schedule of that, where you schedule it in your practice, and then how you manage. Did you move your practice up because it's blazing hot? All of that stuff. So that's why the Ensworth Tigers won't be practicing until the sun goes down.
Okay, smart move. Tim, thanks a lot for checking in with us. We'll talk to you again next week.
Sounds good. See you, fellas.
Yep. All right, Tim Hasselbeck checking in from Clarksville over in Austin P. A shout-out to the Govs out there where Ensworth is doing their training. Once upon a time, the Titans had a training camp out there, and it was hot. It was definitely hot this morning. They went at 8 a.m., and year in and year out, I don't remember too many practices for training camp starting that early, but I'm sure that's why. It was because of the heat, and it was hot for sure. It didn't seem like it was as hot as we can experience because it was earlier, but notable. The heat that's going on.
They could have played in it, man. They wasn't that.
You're not.
I'm not buying it.
I agree.
I'm not buying that. But listen, it's not. I'm not the head coach of this team, and I know that there's a very thin line between winning and losing. You try to use every advantage that you can, or try to use every situation as a situation you can help your team. So you practice early so they don't have to deal with the heat. But here's the thing: you can't do this too many times. You just can't. I can see doing it the first day, but after that it's like, man, we can't say to the NFL, hey, it's 12 o'clock, it's too hot, can we play at 10 o'clock please? Thank you. You can't do that. Eventually they're going to have to be out in that heat. And I'm sure Cali will put them out in the heat. So I'm not sitting here criticizing them for that. But I think sometimes, and rightfully so, sometimes they make too big of a deal about these players out there in the heat during practice. Do the same thing you do for them in a game. Put some, cold stuff, some mist stuff out there so they can, stay cool. But taking them out of the heat, not really doing them any justice.
Yeah, there's a balance. At least not to me. There's a balance for sure. All right, we're going to react to some of the things that Tim said. Also, we've got some calls and texts, 615-737-1025, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. DVD continues right after this.
Derek Mason here. If you injured yourself in a motorcycle accident, go to lawtigers.com for your free case evaluation. Even if your accident was months ago, you have nothing to lose by calling Law Tigers for a free case evaluation. Insurance companies want to pay out as little as possible or basically nothing at all. But at Law Tigers, make sure you get the compensation you deserve and doesn't get paid until your case has been settled. They understand how much your bike gear is worth to you and will help you get it all repaired or better yet replaced. Law Tigers is the resource the motorcycle community turns to when in need. So whether it's to support you in events or see you broken down on the side of the road, with Law Tigers, you'll never ride alone. So call 1-800-LAW-TIGERS or visit lawtigers.com. That's Law Tigers. It's powered by Freeman and Fuson, and you can find them in Nashville at 2126 21st Ave South. That's Law Tigers, Tennessee's motorcycle lawyers.
.1025 The Game and Souls for Souls have teamed up for a back-to-school fundraiser, Souls for the 615. It's to provide new shoes for kids experiencing homelessness in Nashville, help a child in Middle Tennessee, not Minnesota, which I almost
Minnesota
said. Why? I don't know. Step into the new school year with confidence by donating $20 for a new pair of athletic shoes. So for more information and to donate, visit thegamenashville.com/shoes. Souls for Souls. Souls for the 615. It's sponsored by Macero in 12 South. Go check them out for handcrafted cocktails, bold plates, great happy hour, and elevated hospitality. DVD continues as we react to Tim Hasselbeck talking about the first padded practice for the Titans. We got some texts also on our call and text line 615-737-1025, driven by WilsonCounty.com. We've got some questions about the offensive line. Skylar says, how did Dan Moore Jr. look, D-Mace?
I know that there was one play where he, got beat, but I think for the most part, things that I've seen, he did an okay job. It wasn't something that was, noticeable on the bad end or the good end. I think they all sort of had their moments, especially when the Titans were bringing pressure to try to cipher through all that stuff and make sure their blocking assignments are correct. So they all had their own troubles, but I don't think Moore stood out in a bad way. It was just like the quarterback. You got to come out and you got to do better in the next play. Now that you have seen it, you got to come out and there's no excuse.
I would agree. I didn't. Nothing jumped out at me about the offensive line in general, and this will take care of Wes's question in Clarksville. Was it the O-line that contributed to Cam and his issues in practice? I didn't think so. And this is, again, not knowing the context of the plays they're calling and all of those things. I wonder about being able to block this unique scheme, because you've got edge rushers that are inexperienced, not super decorated, and then you've got the very strong interior, which is very different than some of the fronts they're going to see. But all in all, I thought the offensive line looked okay. I didn't think they ran the ball very well, but running plays in training camp have always confused me. It's hard to know because you're not actually bringing the guy to the ground.
Yeah,
it did look like the defense did well in the running drills when they were just all the plays were running plays.
Yeah, because a lot of times, you don't know if the guy's going to be able to take them out or not. You see that the hold is a little bit plugged, but we've seen runners get out of that if guys are not form tackling and doing the right thing. But it did seem like on majority of the running plays, the defense, it would have been a minimal game. They did have one or two that sort of popped out of there. But for the most part, I think they would have been minimal gains even to a point. Sometimes they were even stopped behind the line of scrimmage.
I agree. All right, let's there's another question or two about the Heat. And what the contribution of the Heat to a struggle of the practice. But this is the day and age we live on. Tim Hasselbeck used the term heat dome, and these are all new things that I would say in the last 5 to 10 years, there's been much more of an emphasis on. Don't you think?
Yeah, there's been this, of taking care of the player. Because they have all these monitors on players that tracks their heart rate and everything else, the heat index on their bodies. So they track all of this, and as well as anybody, Willie, because you follow a lot of this. The analytics says this is what you need to do.
Sports science.
Yeah, this is what you need to do. Hold players out. Don't let them go consecutive plays. Watch his heart rate. And if it's ticking up some, you got to pull him out. So when there is this much money invested into a situation, that's when you're going to have things like what teams have now as far as the analytics and how they're measuring individuals when they're going through practice. So I think on one hand it's a good thing, but I think on the other hand it can sort of handicap you where you're so worried about putting a guy in the red that you sort of taper down everything.
Ron, last texter for this hour, then we'll move on to some other Titans topics here coming up. Hey, Mace, what have you seen that you like about Cam in his growth so far? And of course, this is in the context of he definitely struggled today. You're going to hear that all day until practice starts tomorrow morning at 8:00. That how's the rookie going to handle it? But what do you like so far?
I think what I do like, he is recognizing some things, but he's a little bit too slow to pull the trigger. He's recognizing hots. That's when your tight end or your receiver got to help you out. They got to recognize it too. So those are the things that I'm encouraged. He sees the play, but he has to speed up the process in his mind. He sees it, but in his mind, it's still a tick slow. So I am encouraged that he's seeing it, even with some of the bad throws or the interception. He saw it. He's like, hey, he's pointing, I got to do this. So he's recognizing it. He just has to process a little bit faster.
All right. When we come back, we will look at some other things. ESPN has come out with their ranking of the top talent under 25. And it might surprise you where the Titans rank in this. I was very surprised myself. And it was my guy, Aaron Schatz, who put the list together for ESPN. So we'll tell you how that came out and who ranks at the top when we come back. Stay tuned. You're listening to DVD here on 102.5 The Game. All right, let's tell you about Loan Pronto. They are the group that can get you on better footing with your financial game. If especially you're looking at things like a car payment, a car loan that's been bogging you down for a while, maybe it's something else like a high interest credit card that you're maybe starting to max out and you're just not able to whittle it down. If you are a homeowner, your home's equity is yours. And Loan Pronto has the rapid equity loan program that can get you a better interest rate and get you the cash you need to pay off that credit card bill. Get it down to zero, something way more management, or pay off the car and stop paying those interest payments every week. So debt relief is there for you from Loan Pronto. All you have to do is call this A-plus rated company by the BBB and the company that has nearly 2,500 five-star Google reviews. That's Loan Pronto, 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781 on approved credit, NMLSconsumeraccess.org. Teammates Fingen and Donick here on this Tuesday, 102.5 The Game. Don't forget, we are broadcasting live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling Studio, home of the $99. And I lost my place on my thing. What happened? I messed that up.
The $99.
The 90 people are like, the $99 what? The $99 yearly Beehive membership.
There we
go.
go.
It's always about great service.
A professional at the finest.
Dramatic pause.
Yes.
It's called a dramatic pause.
That's being a professional, Willie.
That's right.
You kept it going. You kept the train moving.
That's right. So
an
our
amateur
number
would
2.
have let the train fall off the track. They'd have just been frazzled. Not you, Willie.
I mean, we were like on one wheels. Half of the train was up off the track, and then it went back down. Boom, got back.
But we're back. That's all that matters.
We hit them curves, man. We hit them curves a little bit too tight right there.
Sometimes the fastball is just a little too fast, and we just got to adjust. That's all we got to do.
Well, one of the reasons I was on a different page on my computer as I was reading my guy, Aaron Schatz, who is from the FTN Almanac and a contributor to ESPN, and he's an analytic guy. And I have read his stuff for so long. That's kind of the language I've learned, and I do think his stuff is good. So he put out something on a subject that we have talked extensively about the last couple of years as the biggest flaw and the biggest reason why the Titans are in the situation they're in with a weak roster, and that is lack of talent, 25 and under. And so he put out a list ranking the teams all across the league at talent under 25, and he's got the following criteria. They have created these rankings based on number of starts made by players under 25 years old, number of snaps played by players under 25 years old, quality of play by players under 25 years old, age adjusted to capture the fact that a 21-year-old player of X ability will likely improve more than a 23-year-old player of X ability, and with extra consideration given to Pro Bowl and All-Pro selections, value and length of player contracts, relative importance of positions, with quarterback being more important. And this is going to be the key to what we're going to discuss. Quarterbacks have a higher importance in this criteria. Off-ball linebackers and specialists are less important than other positions. Draft value added in the 2025 draft, also a key component as to where the Titans rank, particularly in the first 3 rounds. Expected key starters and reserved under 25, and significant injuries or suspensions that will affect the 2025 availability of players. And I don't know that really is affecting any of the key guys under 25 for the Titans. But all that said, I've always felt that's a big weakness, and we know what the drafts showed from 2020 to 2022. We don't need to go back through it. But Tennessee ranks number 9, according to Aaron Schatz, up from 22nd last year. And I was like, hey, how about that? But I'm thinking, how? Because when we start listing them, here's what he says are blue chip players under 25. He's got Cam Ward, who hasn't played yet. So he's contributing to this ranking before he's ever played a game. So that's important to note. J.C. Latham, T'Vondre Sweat. These are guys that we have also circled. So, okay, I see that. Notable graduated players, Chigakonkwo no longer qualifies because this is under 25. So this is his explanation for the number 9 ranking. This year's number 1 selection, Ward, turned 23 in May, and he leads the young talent for the Titans. The players protecting him on the offensive line, including 22-year-old Latham and 24-year-old Peter Skoronski at left guard, also round out the group. However, the many young players in Nashville absolutely do not include the wide receiver as 29-year-old Van Jefferson is the youngest of the Titans starting group. Now, that remains to be seen just to see if these young guys, the 4th-round picks, end up ascending in the land of opportunity. Because with all due respect to Van Jefferson and even Tyler Lockett, we don't, until they get out there and show they've still got it, we're not sure. And he actually says the Titans would appear higher on this list if there were more young talent on the defensive side of the ball. That group is highlighted by two 24-year-olds, defensive tackle Sweat and Jarvis Brownlee Jr. at corner. Rookie edge rusher Femi Oladejo turns 22 in September, while rookie safety Kevin Winston turns 22 in December. So this list is, I think, they're overrated at number 9, but I can see why they have them there. But it's based on guys that haven't played yet, right? When you recruit, a lot of the guys on this list are guys they just drafted. And I don't know how reasonable it is for them all to hit, but it just shows you how much they need them to hit. But I was stunned at the number 9 ranking. Number 1 is the Texans, by the way.
Yeah, I'm looking at this roster, and maybe and sometimes this becomes the issue when you're talking more so of a national person writing an article about all 32 teams, and someone that's here seeing the team every day. And I'm not saying that he's not putting in the work to really know this team, but I think sometimes when you see it up close, and when you have seen it up close for as many years, you look at it a little bit different from someone that, if the Titans didn't have the first pick in the draft, say if they had the 4th pick, they still was a bad team, nobody would be talking about them. They wouldn't be talking about, but they're zeroing in on them because, one, they had the first pick in the NFL draft. They drafted a quarterback. Now you look at their whole roster and you say, well, out of all of these guys, I'm looking at your starters under 25, even backups, there's not enough proven commodity with players under 25. There's hope and potential that these players have, but no one has really under 25 and under. Well, some of them hadn't even played yet. And the ones that have played haven't really shown that, they project to be, guys that are going to have long extended careers. We don't know, over the last year and last year, the players that they had, I mean, they drafted early. JC played okay. Who else they had that was young? Brownlee. He played pretty good.
Skoronski. So I think with this criteria, you get credit for just playing.
But it shouldn't be. I understand.
And they do have quality play, but I think they're noting who's getting in there. It's tough when you have a thin group of talent overall because somebody's got to play. And so young guys are going to get opportunities.
Exactly. You prime example. You look at Nicholas Petit-Frere. He had to play. And he's still under 25, I believe, and he just wasn't good, at least not for the Titans. So sometimes you got to play out of necessity, not because they really want you to play, but we attribute it to them and the scouts because these are the players that they brought in and said, hey, it's going to be different this year. Well, last year with the players they brought in, it wasn't different. Even the young guys they went out and drafted. Yes, JC that had a okay season. Yes, Brownlee was pretty good, but and Devondre Sweat, I think he was the one that really sort of, I think the expectation and what you got would totally do two different things. I think you got more than what you expected because people thought he was going to have a weight issue and wasn't going to play as much, but he played majority of the downs.
I also am really surprised that a ranking can be this high when clearly when you look at team by team, they value the quarterback a lot. And Cam Ward is clearly a huge reason why they have the Titans number 9. And we don't know what he's going to look like on the field just yet. But because he was the number 1 selection, I think that probably boosts the ranking maybe more than it should if you're trying to be honest here. For example, the Commanders are number 3. And it says, this rank is not all Daniels, but it's very heavily Daniels. Daniels is now 24. He replaced Stroud as the most valuable young player in the NFL after his dominant rookie season last year. And those two really, have set the standard for Ward, right? Daniels and Stroud, what they've done, that is the model and saying, hey, and even Louis Riddick said it on our show last week. He said, I think, I don't know if it was you or Adam, Derek, and maybe we can find the answer where they said, what's a reasonable goal? What do you want to see this season? And he said all the things that you should say that don't have to do exactly with numbers. He tried to stay away of, he needs to have this many touchdown passes and this many yards. But what he said, he wanted to see a natural progression. He said that if you get all that, you might be able to fight for a 500 record.
Mm-hmm.
And that really caught my attention because that's not Daniels or Stroud. But at the same time, I think that would still be a big overachievement, right? If you were fighting for 500 in the last 3 games of the season, I think most people would say that's the pathway for a really successful rookie season.
Yeah, because
I don't think most people are seeing that.
Because to them, it would have been, if they're fighting for 500, which means they're around 8 and 9, somewhere around that 9 and 8, still hovering around that potentially 500, whether it be 1 game over or 1 game under. If that is indeed the case, then I think that's a win. That's a win for the Titans, not only in the building, but I think it's a win for the Titans when it comes to their fan base. Why? Because they won 2 games last year, 3 games. What did they win last year?
The Titans won 3.
So if they are the last 2 or 3 weeks, they are fighting for 500. That means they have at least 4 more wins than they had last year.
Right.
So that would be a big improvement. Now, but a lot of it hinges on what the article said. Some of these young guys that
it's everything. They've got to build the roster. Like it's whether they have 6 wins or 8 wins, this group of players is going to be what tells the story when that new stadium opens, right?
This is the ground floor. That's just what this is. This season is the ground floor for who the Titans are going to be when they step into that stadium. That's why they didn't pass up on a Cam Ward. I don't think it was a reach to draft Cam Ward, but for those that are saying, well, maybe they should have traded the pick, you've mentioned and you've stuck with it. You say, hey, listen, I would have liked to have gotten the picks, but if it works out, great. But you don't give up those picks because you feel that the guy that you're going to draft is going to make sure or develop to a point where when you step on the field in 2027 in that new stadium, you have a team that's competing, in the playoffs. Yeah. So that's what all of this really points to. And you hope that those under 25 guys, because again, like I said, these are the guys that are going to usher you into that new stadium. A few of the veterans, but it's really going to be these under 25, this year's draft and next year's draft.
And it is notable because I see some of these lists and they draw the line at 25 and under as opposed to under 25, right?
Because typically that's
a big thing in Little League, right? Is it 12 and under or is it under 12, right? Some people go, that's the language. Like in soccer, there was a U11. Mm-hmm. Well, there's, okay. It's when your birthday is and everything. So where you draw the line is kind of arbitrary. So I'd also think that the Titans would rank low. They don't have a lot of 25-year-olds that are good that just graduated out of this list. In fact, Chika Okonkwo is the most decorated player that has graduated out into the age of 25. So the standard I always look at is the Lions, right? That's the hot team with the young talent that did a great job of accumulating a lot of draft picks with the trade of Stafford, right? It took full advantage. And so here are the guys. This is why I think they should be ranked higher than 6. They've gone from 2 to 6. Penei Sewell, Terrion Arnold, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta, Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, who's a safety, and of course Jahmyr Gibbs, right? Aiden Hutchinson, he turned 25. Well, he turned 25. So he is not on the list. That's why they dropped from 2 to 6. But that's a volume of players. That's a nucleus that's going to be around for a while. When I look at the Titans just 3 slots lower, you got Cam Ward, who we don't know if he's going to be able to play. You hope.
Yeah.
Then you got Latham and Sweat, who are still very, very young. I like them, but it's only 2 guys. And then after that, you're getting down to Skoronski, who is a critical guy. And then Jarvis Brownlee. And then you get into all the rookies from this year. That doesn't compare to the list for the Lions. No. So they're waiting the quarterback huge and players who haven't played yet.
Yeah, and
so I'm not down with the number 9. I'm not as optimistic in seeing that.
No, I'm not. I'm not either. It sort of, you know, it sort of makes me, think like, what was he watching? What did he see in these players? I get Tavondre Sweat, I get Jarvis Brownlee, and to an extent, I get JC. Now, Peter has gotten better, but will he be around here for a second contract? Now, because that's what it all boils down to. That's why it's like 25 and under. Why? Because these are guys that are still on their first contract, their rookie contract.
Okay, so that brings us to the question we're going to hit in the next segment, and that is, what's the reasonable goal for the rookie season? How could Cam Ward live up to where you feel good about this talent at age 24 and under 25, as they talk about for Aaron Schatz at ESPN.com? And so Louis Riddick was one that we asked that question to. So we're going to hear his answer when we come back, and we'll go through some of the things and what D Mace thinks could be some reasonable goals that he thinks of, and compared to what Louis said. So stay tuned. We're coming back with that and your calls and texts, 615-737-1025, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Weigh in on this, the Titans roster, age 24 and under. Anything else that's on your mind as well as training camp has cranked up. Also, the Jets signed a kicker, and you've heard of him. We'll tell you about that, too, when we come back on DVD.
Because our primary focus, Lewis, this season will be on the development of Cam Ward, what would you consider a successful rookie season from him? What must you see from him?
Yeah, I think naturally with that question, leads like what kind of numbers would you want to see? Look, I'll just say this. I think what you'd want to see is okay. So natural progression from his college days at Miami, which leads you to make sure that you are playing as on time and in rhythm as you possibly can. So you're not putting yourself in harm's way. So you're not exposing the ball. So you're not, doing some things in the pocket that you were able to get away with in Miami that you're not going to be able to get away with in the pros. And quite honestly, it could get you on the IR list in a hurry if you do some of those things. So you want to see that. You want to see him being able to see the full field. You want to see him distribute the football effectively. You want to see him be great on third downs and be in the top, the top 10, top 15 in the league on third downs, in 2-minute situations, in the fourth quarter when they're behind. All of those metrics, all of those areas that really you judge quarterbacks truly by. Like completion percentage to me, without factoring in difficulty of throws and yards per attempt, doesn't mean anything to me. You want to see the advanced metrics be where he's in the top half of the league, and you want to and because if he can do that, being a rookie, especially with all the new pieces that they're bringing in there, all the young wide receivers that they brought in, the new wide receiving core, the offensive line has to take shape. Then, again, you're really, really going. You really are. And it's not seeing other guys do this. We saw Jaden Daniels do it. We saw CJ Stroud do it. You can hit the ground running and have people going, damn, I didn't expect that. Now, that may be unfair expectation, but he is the number 1 overall pick. And I do believe he has that kind of talent. So I think to see those kinds of things, to me, would denote a successful season, and ultimately for his team to be, fighting for a 500 plus record.
That was Louis Riddick on our show last week talking about reasonable goals for Cam Ward's rookie season. We just went over in our last segment ESPN's rankings of the talent under 25 in the NFL, and the Titans have moved up the ranks to number 9, up from number 22. But when you look closer, so much is hinging on Cam Ward. He's the reason that they've moved up. But we know he hasn't taken a snap in the NFL yet, not in the game. So it's interesting. So in the backdrop of that, D. Mace and I were at practice this morning. We're not going to give you anything that you're not going to hear anywhere else. When you look at the internet, you read up on the beat writers and everybody that covers practice. Cam Ward struggled today. There's no way around it. It was not a great practice. It was the first day in practice, so it's kind of notable. It's kind of a bummer that he has that day, but maybe he'll look back on that and he'll say to himself, that's what made me better, because you push through struggles when you're a rookie. But here are a couple of things, D. Mace, that caught me about Louis Riddick's answer, and that was last week. So this is not Louis answering questions right after he watched Cam practice today like we did. But he said, the natural progression from college where you learn what you can get away with and what you can't get away with. He might have learned a couple lessons today. True?
Yes, a lot.
He might have learned that because he threw some picks today. Terry McCormick was standing next to me when he threw his last pick, and he said, I think the record for a practice at Titans training camp unofficially is Rusty Smith with 5. So I don't think Cam got there today, but he had at least 3 that I saw.
He had 3, 1 a tip.
One was a tip, but that was a classic example of what can you get away with, what can you not. Exactly. He threw a sidearm throw.
Try to get it, release it quickly.
Right.
Because it was a blitz.
It was almost like a second baseman or a shortstop flipping a quick short throw to second for a double play.
Yes.
But he threw it right through an angle where you knew there were trees there. Yeah. There were people there. And it got tipped and got picked off. Yes. So that was a lesson learned. Maybe in Miami you could do that. But he dropped way down with his arm slot there in an area where it just didn't look like there was a lane to throw.
Yeah, and I think he will learn from that. There's going to be times when you can do that and take advantage of it. And there's going to be times where, you're going to have to throw more of a classic, prototypical throw. But that's something that the more and more you sort of play and go through practice, the more and more you figure it out.
Yeah.
On what I can throw, how I can throw it, when I can throw it.
So that's probably not a bad thing that this happens now and not
because he saw it.
Not September 9th. Or
exactly.
You know,
because he saw the blitz. He saw the hot. He was trying to get it to the receiver. Yeah. So that's what I'm encouraged by, that he saw it. Now he has to, from the ball to the release, now he has to figure out a way to sort of, get through those trees.
Right. He also pointed out, Riddick did, play on time and with a natural rhythm. That was another thing that you noted.
Yes.
And I think it was, even I could see it, that there were times, even in the 7-on-7, where there's no defensive line, there's no pass rush. There were times, 2 or 3 times, where it looked like my recess game in the schoolyard, right? Where everybody's going out for a pass and I just hold the ball. Nobody's coming after me. And I'm just looking, and then everybody's running around all over the field going, I'm open. And sooner or later, I just chuck it to somebody. Like, he was out there like 1,000. Like, if there was 3 Mississippi or 4 Mississippi before the pass rush can come, they would have been all over him. But he held the ball. So there was timing issues. And, clearly we got to work on that right now.
Absolutely.
Because in Miami, or when he was at Miami, and probably the places before, there were plays that broke down where he was like, okay, I'll make something happen. I'll roll out, I'll run, I'll do it. But it's harder to do that time in and time out, down in and down out in the NFL, for sure. Caleb Williams is a great example of that.
Yeah, you have to, because players like this, and we see, we're hearing about Caleb Williams go through his struggles, and maybe it's because of sort of the way he approaches the quarterback position, the, arm angles that he throws at. Maybe that is contributing to some of his, woes. I'm not there, so I don't know. But it seems to be he's having trouble there, at least to start off, in Chicago. And again, this is where I think Cam Ward has to, this is where that learning curve will start, where you go out one practice, you see things, it's not working, or you may have some trouble. Then you go back, you watch film, and you adjust things based upon what you saw and what you're studying, and knowing that you're going to get that look. It may not be the first play in practice, but you're going to get that look, or a look similar to that. Now I know, how to sort of approach each play and how I'm going to get the ball off. So, I think all quarterbacks have their days. Cam had his day today. It didn't look good. And when Cam doesn't look good, the offense doesn't look good.
Here's a good question for you on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Before we get to the last part of Riddick's answer that I really want to hit on, because I think we get into the goal. The texter says, was it a concerning day or was it just a bad day?
I think it was just a bad day. It was just a bad day. I'm not this, hyperbole. I'm not getting into that. No, I think it was just as I coined it, it was a rookie day. I'm not concerned now. If it continues to happen, then yeah, obviously I'm going to be concerned, but I am not going to just all of a sudden go from 0 to 100 and say, oh, we got problems here in Titans camp. Oh my goodness, Cam Ward isn't who they thought he was. No, I'm not going to see that, because I understand that, especially as a rookie quarterback, you're going to look like a rookie. And typically it's the first day of pass that you're going to look like a rookie. And then you just hope that from that point on, he starts to learn and starts to recognize things. See, that's the whole thing. It's like, as a quarterback, there are some things that I'm just not going to see. There are some things that the defense have been holding back. And now we're in pass, they're going to throw it all at you. It's not that I didn't see it the first time. It's how do I react to it the second time?
That's a great point. I think that's what it's all about. Now, let's get to the last part of Riddick's answer, where he said, if you could give him a chance, right? And this is an if. He's more or less looking at the offensive line and the investment in the offensive line. He said, a reasonable goal could be can you get the metrics? He said, forget about yards and all of that stuff. It's all that next wave of efficiency that you're looking for. Could you get in the top half of the league? And so that would stop you short of what Daniels and Stroud did in their rookie years. But he said, if you could get into the top half of the league, that would be a really good rookie year. And he said you could fight for a 500 record.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be high end. But I do say to myself, look, Will Levis could look good for a drive or two. Many weeks. Like I could pull out some game film and say, watch this drive.
Mm-hmm.
And Will Levis looks pretty good. But at the end of the year, he was at the very bottom of all of these metrics that Louis Riddick is talking about. So what would it look like if you had your quarterback numbers in the top half of the league? That would be huge. I think regardless of how many actual touchdown passes and all that we see. I will believe that when I see it, just because I don't have a lot of faith in the roster right now. But I'm encouraged that Louis Riddick thinks that's achievable.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, because I was discussing this on the sideline too today, and just looking at, what this team is made of right now compared to last season. And you and I have talked about this, or I think it was Adam and I, but I know you've mentioned it at times, and we've talked about this in the past. When you look at the Tennessee Titans, before half, during and before half, they were either leading or within 4 or 5 points of their opponent heading into halftime.
Looking back on it, if you forgot, like if you go week by week, it will surprise you how many times they led at half.
Exactly. And then after half, it's all of a sudden they just fall apart. Well, if they can, that's why I said that it's critical for them to stay healthy, because it's almost like a microcosm of their season, when the game is a microcosm of their season. They can play well for a period of time, and then the next half it goes to hell in a handbasket for whatever reason. Why? I believe because the roster is not deep, the talent is not there. So you have that as regards to a game, but then you have that in your season, that because this team doesn't have enough high-end players, that if anybody goes down, the longer they get into the season, they end up getting worse by the week. They have to find a way to make sure, one, they stay healthy, because that's the only way, because they can't afford to have a guy go down. Matter of fact, they can't afford to have a guy go down on the offensive line. They can't afford to have a guy go down in the receiver room. They can't afford to have a guy go down anywhere on their roster outside of maybe the D-line. Maybe the D-line.
And I am curious if Borgonzi, being that he's new, can get back to what I think John Robinson was pretty good at for a while, and that is finding some depth, with the last 15 guys on your roster that are going to be guys off the street, guys who are just the right fit, lower level, low draft picks that fill holes, or guys you find off the waiver wire. They are the number one team on the waiver wire. I wonder if they can make a little headway on the margins there, because that would help. Because you're right. They can't afford, like when Patrick Mahomes is out there, he can make up for the fact that you got 4 or 5 guys hurt.
Yeah, you got 3 receivers hurt.
This roster can't do that.
I can make up for it. Hence, they went to the Super Bowl. Here's the thing, with this roster, and I just lost my train of thought, but here's the thing with this roster, why, this team is not as good now, whereas you look back 4 or 5 years ago, they were. And I can remember what John Robinson would always say. He and Vrabel, each week they're bringing in people to compete. They're not bringing in somebody that's just going to hold to water. No, we are constantly looking at making this roster better and competing. No one's job is secure, even though we know there are a few that are secure. But he made everybody believe that each player they were bringing in, competition. I didn't see that the last 2 seasons. And I even talked about it last year when they brought in no competition for Nicholas. So much so he came back and he just thought it was his spot. Like, oh, I'm going to win this job. Why? Because you didn't bring in true competition. You didn't bring in anybody to push him. You didn't bring in anybody to push Will Levis when he was a quarterback. So the roster was much more competitive amongst each other and was pushing each other, whereas it's not that way now. They're trying to get back to that. That's why Brinken and Borgonzi are talking about draft, develop, and retain, because they lost that. In somewhere in that Vrabel, Robinson transferring to Rand Carthon and Brian, they lost being competitive in if you can't be competitive in practice and amongst you can't be competitive in a game.
Yeah, and I'm not skilled enough to know if they're making headway there with because right now you got
only time
85
will tell.
guys.
Yeah, only time will tell with that.
Yeah, but that would be curious to me if they can make some small gains there in the depth. That because all the little things add up, and that could maybe help Cam Ward have a good rookie season, which is everything is riding on that. When we come back, we'll hit some news and notes. There's one over in Knoxville that I think is absolutely newsworthy. If you follow SEC football, and particularly if you cover the Vols, there's been some drama, shall we say. And Chris Lowe has put something out there. We're going to get some perspective on that. And also, as we mentioned, the Jets have signed a kicker. You've heard of him. He's still in the league. The Titans moved on from him last year. Let's talk about that when we get back. Nick Folk is kicking for the Jets again. This is a throwback. Stay tuned. We're coming back here on DVD. D-Base, Vigan, and Donick, presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason here with you. Adam Vingan on vacation this week. There's a new kicker, a new old kicker, back in the league. His name is Nick Folk. He is 40 years old.
This isn't a folklore.
And he has been brought back to the NFL via a team he kicked for a long time, the New York Jets. So, looking to upgrade their kicking situation, the Jets signed a familiar face, re-signing well-traveled free agent Nick Folk. Now, Folk used to be the Jets kicker. You want to name the seasons that he kicked for the Jets? Take a guess. He earned the nickname Folk Hero from former coach. I don't want to say who his name is because I'll give away the years.
Herm Edwards.
Nope.
No, it wasn't Herm.
Not
Edwards.
not quite that far.
It wasn't Rex.
Yes, it was.
It was Rex. So we're talking.
He played for Rex Ryan.
Yeah, so we're talking 2009, 8 till.
You're close.
13.
You're very close. 2010 to 2016. He kicked for the Jets in 2010.
Oh, he was there when I was there then. My
My son, Mahoney Donick, is a college student right now. He was 5 in 2010.
Hey, Folk was there when I was there.
I was in high school.
Where were you in 2010, people? Nick Folk was kicking for the Jets, and he is now back with the Jets. And it does bring up a question because Folk, and I will never let Jared Stillman forget the soapbox he was on when the Titans signed him, and he went through this whole thing about Nick Folk has no leg. He can't make the long field goals. He's got no leg. And so every time he hit a field goal from 15 over, I would text Jared every single time, and I would text 2 words: no leg. I'm going to miss that.
No leg.
But it does bring up this question, right? It's not the biggest question in the grand scheme of things for the Titans because it's all about Cam Ward, as we know, and developing the youth on the roster. But Nick Folk was the most accurate kicker in the NFL over the past 2 seasons. For his 2 years with the Titans, he made 50 of 52.
Oh, wow.
50 for 52. Now, I think he missed an extra point or 2 in there. But for field goal attempts, that's 96%. Number 1 in the NFL. But I guess the Titans just thought he's going to age out, or I don't know if they thought he's going to be too expensive. I don't know if I've heard them explain exactly why. I don't remember.
It had to have been the aging out thing. Don't you think?
Yeah, he's 40.
Because he was a good kicker for them.
But remember, I mean, how old was Gary Anderson when he came back? Remember, he was fishing he would go fishing all week and then show up on
He only
Friday.
had to show up on Thursday and Friday. That's it. That's all he had to do. Show up
Floyd
on Thursday
Reese gave
and
him the deal because Joe Nedney got hurt. This is when back when D. Mace was playing. Then they were in a pinch for a kicker. And Gary Anderson, I want to say, was at least 44.
Yeah.
At least.
He had the game-winning field goal
in
did. Baltimore.
And it got over by about
a hair.
I think there's still yellow paint just grazing the ball.
There's a picture of me jumping and hugging him so hard, boy. Goodness gracious.
With the 1-bar face mask.
Yes.
But the Titans are going with a younger kicker named Joey Sly. And I did watch him kick today. And of course, on Saturday, these are the little clips that you see. He made one from 66, right?
Yeah, but the name Joey Sly, how he looks is synonymous with his name.
Exactly. You're right.
It is. They go hand. It's like hand in glove. Sly in his name. This is a guy that, what is he, about 5'9"?
He's listed at 5'11", 213.
He looks, because he's so like jacked, he looks shorter than 5'11". I thought he was about 5'6".
Sometimes they can be generous with these heights.
Yeah, but it's like, it looks like after he's done kicking, he go in the weight room. That's what it looked like. So keep it up, Sly. Keep it up, man.
It's not like he's
wrong with it.
And it's not like he's an unknown.
No.
Right? He's kicked in the league. He's got 75 games. He's hit about the average accuracy you would expect. He's 81.7%. He's kicked for a lot of teams. Carolina, Houston, San Francisco. And then Washington is his longest tenure. And then last year he kicked for the Patriots. So all that to say, they thought Joey Sly this year will be better than Nick Folk this year. So that's just one to file away, because it would have been, I don't think anybody would have batted an eye if they'd have brought Folk back and say, hey, he hit all the field goals last year. Let's bring it back until he can't do it.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, I think it's one of those things where you would rather err on the side of not having him because of the age, than, having him. You'd rather have a young, kicker out there, that younger kicker that has proven he can kick, he can kick field goals from a distance. And, because nowadays the place kicker has become very important.
And I would say, don't you think that there has been a little bit more with analytics and everything? You're going to go for it more.
Yes.
When the ball's on, say, the 30 or the 33, instead of trying to kick the 48 or 49 yarder, if it's 4th and 3, you go for it. So the value of Folk being pretty much money from 45 and in maybe gets minimized. And then I see more. Don't you think there's more teams now that will try the 60-something yarder? Don't you think? I feel like there's more people that are like, 58, 60. Yeah, send them out there.
Yeah, depending
on. But used to, like Jeff Fisher, he was not doing that unless you had to try it at the end of the half. Or remember Rob Baronis hit the 60-yarder. But I think there used to be a lot more, let's go field position. Let's knock him inside the 10.
Yeah, I think field position is still a huge key when making these decisions. But I think now that, because you got to understand, analytics really wasn't in play back then at all.
Right.
But now, because you have these extra numbers that are sitting on his pad and it's telling you, well, from this yardage to this yardage, on this down, you can go for it or maybe don't go for it. Or you better, percentage of kicking a field goal right here. And even if you don't make it, you're still in a better position to stop the opponent and still have good field position, once you get the ball. So there are a bunch of numbers and analytics that go into, should we kick a 60-yarder? Should we not? Now, some teams, i.e. Baltimore, they may not be able to do that anymore, but they had one of the greatest, if not the greatest place kicker in the NFL. So them kicking it a 60-yarder was nothing.
Yeah.
But another team,
the confidence that a guy can hit it from that far definitely is a thing. And,
exactly.
And Folk, I kid Jared, but there's no question as you get older, Folk could hit from 50 to 52, but I don't know if he was going to line up for a 58.
Yeah,
so Slide, the last 2 years, he hit a 63-yarder last year. He hit a 61-yarder 2 years ago for Washington. So his range is definitely what they're looking for.
Yeah, those come into play right before the half or at critical times in the game where we need 3 points. Like, if we can get 3 points right here, put us in a better position, whether it be to take the lead, tie, or get within, one score. And if you have a kicker that has proven that he can hit a 58-yard plus field goal, then you're more inclined to throw him out if the analytics match it.
Yes. So I think the standard for the kicker in the NFL goes up every year. You're expected to not miss inside 40.
Oh,
like
yeah,
ever.
Absolutely.
You're expected to never miss.
Honestly, really 45.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's getting every year. It's further out where you're expected to make it. I remember Mike Vrabel. There were times where I thought he was conservative after he got into that 46, 47 range. He was like, well, you should make it. We should make it when it's 40. And I'm like, well, why settle for that if you can get it to 40 or 41? Like every yard should make it easier.
Yeah.
But there's still that sense of, hey, we're at 45, we're at 47. We should make it. We should be good.
Because they're playing these. I mean, listen, they're playing
these guys are good. They're too good for their own good.
They're much better now, I believe, than what they have been. Not to say that there were not great kickers back in the day, because there were. But I think there's more volume. But it's not necessarily the strong leg. It's more so the accuracy with the strong leg. Because if you're accurate without a strong leg, after a while, I got to go get another kicker that can kick me, because every yard is important. Every yard that you can gain, when you're kicking a field goal is important. What I mean by gain is, like, if I can kick a 60-yarder, that gains me points. If I can kick a 61-yarder, that gets me points. So every yard past, say, the 55, it gets me points if I have a kicker that can kick that far.
Right. And that's coupled with what we were saying before, that around the 30, the 35, you're more apt to go for it than you used to.
Yes.
So you're expected to make it anytime you're trying it, but now the range is probably more important than before. Let me get to Howie, who wants to comment on Nick Folk going to the Jets. Howie, welcome in.
Hey, what's up, fellas? Good noonday to you.
Same to you.
Yeah. So so before that, I was looking up 2010. You asked what were you doing?
Where were you in 2010, Howie?
So a few things. The iPads came out.
Okay.
2010, so that was pretty huge. Skinny jeans and leggings became popular then too. So
did you have a pair of skinny jeans?
Yeah. So I think I probably will be wearing those on my iPad, hanging out, streaming videos.
Of course.
Somewhere in the world. So with that said, wow, Nick Folk is old indeed. But with that said, this is big. Like what D Mace is saying and what you guys are saying, this is huge. You know, with a rookie quarterback, think about Cameron Ward. You know, we want the best situation for him to be successful as possible, right? And so, like, a kick can really jettison your team positively and negatively, right? I mean,
the kicker, I don't know how they make it. The mental toughness of these kickers, because you're expected to be perfect.
Exactly. And so if we're hoping for the Titans to have a good season to one day flirt with 500, I would think that a lot of these margin of victory wins that happen in NFL come down to a kick made or miss. And so I would go with the accurate kicker, the most accurate kicker in the NFL over this guy. But so this is a big decision. I want to ask you guys, do you see this being one of those early firing versus keeping decisions
it's a good question because I think the less time that you're there with a new team, the shorter your leash. You got to earn your stripes.
Yeah.
It's a good question. And I will say this, the last 2 years for Joey Sly, where Nick Folk was at 96%, Joey Sly 79% both years. So he's missed a few more. Now, maybe he's trying a few more long ones because he's got better range. That's something you got to factor in. But yep, new kicker, and Nick Folk is still in the league. You can't call him up. That safety valve call, he gone. He's back with the Jets, where he was in 2010
back with his team.
Rex Ryan. All right, that's all we got for this hour. The third hour is coming up here on DVD. Stay tuned to 102.5 The Game. Hour number 3 of DVD. D-Mace, Fingan, and Donick. Hey, don't forget, this fall, live at the Pinnacle at Nashville Yards, Tim McGraw is going to perform at, I want to say this right, Trinitix Rock the Cradle. This event is sure to be a great time celebrating a great cause. Proceeds from the event will support newborns and moms at Ascension St. Thomas Midtown. Get your tickets now at rockthecradlenashville.com. We're broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. First day in pads for the Titans today. D-Mace and I were out at training camp, and the big theme today, there's no question about it, these were the growing pains of a rookie quarterback. Cam Ward struggled some today through multiple interceptions, 3 at least, maybe 4. I don't want to say I lost count, but it was a rough day. There were a lot of throws that were just not close. And as D-Mace has pointed out, a lot of them were attacking down the field. They were really pushing the ball down the field today just to try to get a reference point. And so it was interesting. So Brian Callahan addressed the media before practice, and I thought it was interesting what he had to say about Cam Ward before they took the field and had some of the struggles that they had.
Yeah, playing quarterback in the NFL, I don't think there's any substitutes of playing quarterback. You know, there's so many things they learn when they play the game that you can't necessarily simulate and teach. That part of being in the fire is what helps quarterbacks get better and faster. So I've always been a big believer of guys playing. That's how they improve. So his demeanor gives me a ton of confidence that he can handle a rough spot or two. Because look, it's the reality of quarterback playing the league and being a young player. Like, there's going to be ups and downs. It happens. But you see his demeanor, his heart rate never changes. He doesn't flinch when it comes to a mistake or two, and he just goes right back and does it again. And I think that's the makeup you have to have as an NFL quarterback, because every quarterback in the league throws interceptions. Every quarterback in the league gets sacked. Every quarterback in the league loses games. So you have to battle through those moments, and the mindset and the makeup of the person is really what separates guys and being able to handle those things. So Cam has shown thus far that he's up to that task, and there's still things to come and some things he's going to have to deal with, but I'm pleased with his ability to handle it so far.
Okay, so there's Brian Callahan before practice, and it's so interesting that that's where the questioning took him. And he talked about how he feels like Cam Ward can handle the fire of rough spots. He doesn't flinch. He can bounce back. He can go through the adversity. And that absolutely played itself out today. So my question is a little bit here, D-Mace. Did they almost try to put him in a difficult spot? Because I have heard that as many as a coaching philosophy. I don't know about the first day in pads, but I have heard, for example, my background in basketball. There were plenty of practices, and Bobby Knight, I've read, famously did this, where you try to make the practice harder than it's going to be in the game. You're going to put stuff up there in front of your team that is so difficult on purpose, so that when you get in the game, it almost seems easier in some ways. So do you think when he said that, did you think in his mind Brian Callahan was saying, Cam might struggle today, I'm going to put some tough stuff in front of Cam?
I think as a head coach, that's what you need to do. You want to put your quarterback in sort of this advantageous situation and see how he reacts, see how the teams react based upon what he's doing. Because you understand, listen, it's not always going to be how we draw it up. Do we want it to be that way? Absolutely. But it's not going to be that way. So I want to throw as many scenarios at you as possible. So, because a lot of this you may see on game time. Some of it you may not. But we're going to throw so much stuff at you and make you sort of think on the run, so to speak, but not running, but think on the run, that there's going to be some mistakes made. But we want to see how you handle them. We want to see if you recognize your mistakes, or if you recognize what we're trying to do quickly as far as what the defense is trying to do to our offense. If you're picking it up, because listen, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinators before practice, they set up scripts. They said whether it be 7-on-7. Well, we're going to emphasize the deep ball. Now there's some portions of practice where it's just, okay, we're calling it from the hip. Like this team period, we're calling it straight from the hip. We're not going by the script. We're calling it straight from the hip. Those are more competitive because it's like your defense versus my offense. You don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what you're doing. So those are a little bit more competitive, and you get a truer picture. But there are times within a practice where you script the practice so the quarterback almost in a sense is struggling. He's going to struggle, but you want to see how he pulls himself through that struggle. You're not looking at, oh, he's not completing pass. You're looking like, okay, yeah, that was going to be incomplete. I knew it. Now, let me see how he comes back the next play, or let me see how he comes back the next period when we throw that same thing at him. How does he respond then?
Yes. That goes back to something we hit on with TJ Watt. And when TJ Watt was calling out why does anybody keep stats in practice?
Exactly.
This is dumb because you don't know the context. I will guarantee you will see, if it's not already out there. I don't know if Nick Suss or John Glennon or anybody Jim Wyatt will put out any stats from practice or complete, but it'll be ugly if they do, right? They're definitely going to chronicle the interceptions. But what we don't know is the context. And it did strike me because I didn't hear this clip until after I was driving here, I just watched practice. But it did make me pause and say, did Callahan sort of set up to where he was going to really put Cam Ward to the test? And he's confident in saying, I think he can handle a tough day.
Yes.
I think he can handle it, and he's going to need to handle it, right? But let's give him some adversity early on, and this may be the quicker path to learning.
Yeah, there's always, you as a head coach or an offensive coordinator, you're tasked to try to find the best way to get your quarterback to learn, to speed up the learning process. So, every coach sort of has their own philosophy on how to do that. Maybe Coach Callahan's is, okay, let's throw a lot at him, see how he processes it. We're not looking so much of is he completing the pass or is he not? Now, if it's wide open, you don't complete it. Now, we do have a problem, but we're not so much concerned about the pass being completed per se. We want to see if he's recognizing what they're doing to him. Because if he's recognizing what they're doing to him, I think eventually the connection will come. And that's what we talked about. It seems like he was a little bit too slow on things today. It was processing it too slow. And sometimes, he saw it, but again, it didn't come out as fast as it should have. You hope that by showing him that today, that the next practice, things quicker. He sees it quicker. I was always told, if the quarterback hits you in the back of the head, that's your fault. Seriously.
Right.
It's your fault because either you're not getting your head around fast enough and getting out of your break, or you don't see the blitz. And the quarterback has to release it. So if he hits you in the back of the head, that's your fault. That's the way we were taught. And I think it's true. Because if you're seeing it the way the quarterback's seeing it most times, you're not going to get hit in the back of the head. It got to a point where I wasn't getting hit in the back of the head by Steve or Neil or Joe, because we figured each other out and we saw the same thing. That's what Cam has to start doing with the receiver. They got to see the same thing, because if I hit you in the back of the head once, that was okay. But if it happens more than that, then we got a problem.
I think we're going to see a heightened. This is building to some drama tomorrow.
Yeah, I hope so.
Right? We're going to be out there again. We're going to see how he does respond, which will be part of that growth process. Our coverage of Titans training camp, by the way, is presented by Macero and 12 South and Parman Energy Group. So this gets to the bigger question that is a theme of the season, and that is, can Brian Callahan survive and not be the scapegoat, not be the guy that takes the fall if they struggle? And also for those, and I would be in this camp, who are hoping that Brian Callahan graduates into this job and is given some leeway, because it is an advantage, I think, for a rookie quarterback to grow with the same offensive staff and not constantly be shaking up and changing your offensive terminology, the coordinator, all of that stuff. So for Cam Ward's development, you're hoping that Brian Callahan survives. That would be best case scenario in my mind. But people are wondering that because it's also easy to say, he's not my guy.
Yes.
Mike Barganzi, Chad Brady, that's not my guy. Let's get my guy in. It's happened in the history of sports, in every sport. So here's what Louis Riddick said when D-Mace asked him about Brian Callahan and is he the right guy in his mind.
Louis, what are your thoughts on
that's
Brian
not Derek.
Callahan
This is Adam.
as a head coach? And do you think he is the right coach to maximize Ward's talents and get out of him all of the things that you were just addressing?
From a personality and demeanor perspective, he is one of the most enjoyable people to talk to of all the guys that we've sat and talked to in my time, doing live games and talking to these guys in production meetings as I've ever talked to. Very even keel, very knowledgeable about the process that it takes in order to build a quarterback from the ground up, manage him during the game, stay in tune with him during the game, get him into situations that help him remain comfortable, giving him some leeway to go ahead and, play outside of the box, help him, decipher what he saw coming off the football field so he can make the, appropriate corrections and then go out there and improve. These are all things that, from my experience with him and from talking to people who have been around him, lead me to believe that, yeah, he is the right person. He will be able to get that done. Now, there's just a lot that's going to go into Cam's ultimate success failure. Obviously, Brian's a big part of it, but I don't think there's nothing that I've seen from what I've been exposed to with him or with anybody else has told me about him that would lead me to believe that he is not the guy.
So that was a good initial talk. And he goes on to say, too, because you followed up with him, D-Mace, about the whole lame duck. Sometimes you get labeled, look at him. It's not his guy. He's the lame duck. And Louis Riddick had some good philosophical discussions. You can tell he does think that Brian Callahan has a lot of credibility. I think right now with the fan base, there's a lot of, let's see, because he's not Mr. Rah-Rah. Right, he's not going to wow you with some video of him giving a speech to the team. That's not in his DNA.
No.
And they haven't won, so he hasn't earned his stripes. But he said, if you're the GM, if you're Mike Borgonzi, and you shouldn't go looking for reasons to fire him. Take it organically, because sometimes in the history of the NFL, there are GMs, etc., that they maybe. You think you're smarter than you really are because it's a razor's edge that determines success. It's, all of these factors that I think Brian Callahan is not fully responsible for. And at the same time, he does have to be held accountable for some of it. But all that being said, this will be an interesting litmus test here, day in and day out, with how Cam Ward does in the training camp, because it will reflect on Callahan.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it's not, and again, I say this, I don't think it's more so the record, it's the development. And it's not so much of it's the development of the quarterback. Because if, say, for instance, the linebackers aren't developing, well, we just changed the linebackers coach. But if you are developing that quarterback and you see progress in him, I'm not changing the head coach. I'm telling the head coach, hey, you need to get you another linebackers coach. You need to get you another, wide receivers coach. I'm not advocating for those guys to be fired. Not one bit. I'm saying if those guys aren't, say the receiver room right now as it's they only have three guys with experience in this league. 3 guys, Lockett, Ridley, and Jefferson, true experience. If those other guys aren't developed by the wide receiver coach, but the quarterback is developing, then it's going to be said you need to get somebody else to develop that position. Because while you're developing your quarterback, we're not getting that out of the receivers. So I think a lot of it is hinged on his development with this quarterback, Cam Ward. That's why you need to put him in positions where it's almost inevitable that he's going to fail right now, but you just want to see how he handles it. If those other positions don't develop the way you want to, get you a new coach, get you a new position coach. But we're keeping the head coach because it seems like he's developing the quarterback the way we want it to. But usually if the quarterback's developing, you're winning football games.
Ron has an interesting text on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. He said, do you think, D-Mace, that a coach would go as far as to tell the defensive coordinator what the offense is going to do in order to put extra pressure on Cam? In other words, this theory of you try to make it tougher on your quarterback than it's actually going to be in a game.
Absolutely.
Have you ever seen anybody do that?
But they're not going to tell them. They're just going to say, here's the play. You strip the defense. Here's the play. Oh, man. Here, I'm going to put on my glasses off. Here's the play. Whatever it is. All right. Motion San Diego. All slants. I'm telling you what we're running. I ain't telling you where the ball is going. I'm just telling you, this is the play we have in. Now call your defense. Now, Cam, because they may set up a defense to take away his first option. That's all they're doing. Taking away a defense to take away his first or second option. Let's see how fast Cam scans and get to that third option. That's scripting it in a way, not necessarily to make the quarterback look bad, but make the quarterback have to go through his progression. Okay, I'm gonna sit inside on this San Diego. I'm gonna sit inside on Calvin Ridley. He can't run a slant. I'm gonna sit inside on the slot guy Lockett. There's no double slants here. On the backside, I'm gonna make it look like I'm inside, but I'm gonna play man outside. At the last minute, I'm gonna head up to outside. Well, Cam got to read all this now. He has to read it quick. I took away his first two options. Go to your third option. Let's see how fast it takes you from get to 1, 2 to 3. That's basically what it is.
Joey from Bellevue says, I'm curious how he's going to do in the joint practice against the Bucs and the Falcons. That'll be the next step in the process. But he said, guys, you're on it. Jim Wyatt already has put out the stats for Cam's practice today. I'm sure Jim is not the only one that has done that.
And when I was telling, I was sitting on I was talking to Hut, and Hut said, Mace, why they got those screens up there? And at first I didn't see them. I was like, oh, those. I said, what teams are trying to do now? I think it's more so for the fans behind us. They can't see practice. A lot of them can't see practice because of everything is at ground level. Well, they're trying to give them a game time experience. So what do you do when you can't see the field? You go to the Jumbotron to watch the play.
And it's on a delay. So
and
you
it's
can
on a delay. So you can actually see the play. And maybe a player, as he's walking back, just like he does in a game, he looks up at the Jumbotron, and he looks at the play as it's going. He's getting the replay of it. He's like, either he's excited or he's like, man, I was open.
And now we just had the caller said that the iPad was invented in 2010. Now you see iPads all over the place on the side, looking at stuff.
So when you see stuff like that, they're just trying to give you a sort of this game time experience without it being an actual game. That's why you throw stuff at the quarterback, just like you would approach the fan base. Try to give them as realistic of a picture you can in practice with the fans, so they can look over there and see the play as it's going on again. That's what you're trying to give Cam Ward, the most realistic look at a play that he can possibly get, because we may call San Diego or we may call some other play, and they may play the perfect defense on the call side. How fast are you getting back to that third? How fast are you getting back to that third receiver or that swing out the back?
When we come back, we're going to hit on another topic that has hit to the eastern part of the state. Over in Knoxville, there's been a lot of buzz about one of the key players for the Vols, and there is some news on that front. It's been a sort of a tumultuous drama, a little bit, if you want to, for lack of a better term. And Josh Heupel addressed it for the first time in a while, and so we'll tell you what he said. Stay tuned. We're listening, or this is DVD here on 102.5 The Game.
Derek Mason here, and if you've injured yourself in a motorcycle accident, go to lawtigers.com for your free case evaluation. Even if your accidents Even if your accident was months ago, you have nothing to lose by calling Law Tiger for a free case evaluation. Insurance company want to pay out as little as possible. As a matter of fact, nothing at all. Law Tigers make sure you get the compensation you deserve and doesn't get paid until your case has been settled. They understand how much your bike gear is worth to you and will help you get it all repaired, or better yet, replaced. Law Tigers is the resource the motorcycle community turns to when in need. So whether it's to support events or if they see you broken down on the side of the road, with Law Tigers, you'll never ride alone. So call 1-800-LAW-TIGERS or visit lawtigers.com. That's Law Tigers, which is powered by Freeman and Fuson. And you can find them in Nashville at 2126 21st Ave South. That's Law Tigers, Tennessee's motorcycle lawyers.
Back here on DVD, 1025 The Game. I'm going to ask the question to David James. Is Jared Stillman going to grace us with his presence in the final segment?
I got a text from him. Yes, we got him.
Isn't that something?
Thank goodness.
We feel so much more important.
Yes.
Isn't this good?
He didn't big time.
And he was at practice this morning.
He was at practice.
And we have had a couple of texts wondering how Jared's going to react after he's going to give you some "I told you so." Yeah. I'm sure about, but overhyping the Saturday performance, because as the theme of the day is, yes, Cam Ward struggled today. It's not the end of the world, but he did have some growing pains there.
But he did admit at the beginning of practice, he told me that it feels different out here. He said that. Now, I don't know if it was a different good or a different bad, but he said it feels different. It could be Cam Ward. Didn't people say, hey, it's just a little different around here now that Cam Ward? It's
definitely different.
Maybe it has hit Jared too. That, Cam Ward does make this thing a little different. Look, I feel a little something about it, So Jared said it. I didn't say it.
We'll expound on that in the next segment.
He has to explain himself.
In the meantime, remember to tune in later to ESPN 94.9 The Fan as the Sounds take on Scranton Wilkes-Barre. Pregame begins at 5:20 and the first pitch is at 5:35. Coverage also available on the Game Nashville app and theGameNashville.com. Sounds Baseball on ESPN 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks and Family Leisure. The trade deadline in Major League Baseball is Thursday afternoon.
Also, it's Wilkes-Barre.
I always get that wrong, but it seems to change.
It doesn't. In your defense,
I feel like
it doesn't
different
look like
people.
Barry.
I feel like people say it different ways.
Yeah.
I gotta consult my friends from Pennsylvania and say where did I go wrong?
Hey, my guys from Scranton. What
Wilkes-Barre. It's spelled Barre. And I guess I don't know. Maybe I've just been reading the backs of baseball cards and never asked anybody how do you say this.
Nah.
Is that still the Yankees AAA? I think it is. Right?
I think so. I believe so. I gotta double check.
So with that in mind, keep an eye on the trade deadline coming up on Thursday. But here's the story we wanted to hit this this segment here.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of drama with Boo Carter, defensive back for University of Tennessee. And there was speculation, and it was fueled a lot by all of the action you hear on social media, right? And in a town like Knoxville, it was dominating a lot of discussion there on, hey, what does this mean? Is this real? Is it not real? And Josh Heupel had to come out and announce some things today. He is not dismissed in spite of a tumultuous offseason. I'm reading this off of CBSSports.com, Will Backus. So he is not dismissed from the team leading up to the official beginning of training camp. And of course, we know now in a college sports season, there really isn't no off season. You never really get to go home. I don't, it's really weird to me. I still wish they would try to separate it a little bit, but it seems like you never leave. So Heupel came out and addressed this. Carter has not been with the team since July 16th. So we're going on a couple weeks now. When he got into an altercation with teammates, Carter will not return to the field immediately, though Heupel did not discuss any plans for a suspension. Boo is part of our team here, Heupel said. There are some things that he's got to accomplish to get back on the field with us. We don't have a set timeline. Our leadership council has been a part of these discussions with me and with Boo. Carter's absence had nothing to do with revenue sharing or NIL. And that was where the speculation, I think, went rampant on social media. The tension between the two sides stemmed from what Tennessee and its player leadership council consider multiple team rule violations. Carter did not attend Tennessee's team workouts leading into its fall camp, which is set to begin July 30th. Players had to report to campus on July 29th. Retaining Carter, in spite of the drama, is significant for Tennessee in that he was a member of the 2025 preseason All-SEC third team after impressing as a freshman for the Vols in 2024. He made an early impression as a punt returner. He fielded 12 kicks for 198 yards, eventually emerged as a starter on defense at the star position, Tennessee's name for its slot corner. He finished the freshman campaign with 28 tackles, 3 for a loss, 1 sack, etc. There's also some speculation he wants to play on offense as well. So there's a lot going on there. But David, let me throw it to you because you followed him for longer. But so how big of a story has this been?
This has been like a pretty big story. I've seen a lot of my friends who are Vols fans talk about this. I mean, last year, there was always those like, I'm thinking about transferring, and he got the big deal from the NIL right around December time before, wanting to go to Colorado. I think that's what the rumors were around, at least around December, January time. And Tennessee got a new deal going around that time. And I think that's what everyone was afraid of, just because that's the same thing with Nico too, was that he wanted that new deal. And
they drew the line.
Yeah, they drew the line right there. But Boo is more of a, like, this is just a, just fights between teammates. I think this is like a little different especially from what the article said. It's not NIL related, but I mean, who knows sometimes, but like he's a really good playmaker. That's the one thing I've seen a lot through his time in high school is he is the playmaker. He's the guy that you want on your team to make the plays from punt return to defense to offense. So he's just one of those guys you want to have, but do you want the sense drama with it? I mean, I wouldn't say he's a big drama guy. I don't know him personally, but like from what we've seen, I mean, It's hard not to say that.
Yep. So this is something D-May said has happened in sport. I can't speak to the specifics of this one, right? But I think we've all been on a team where you've got a guy who's very talented, but there's issues, right? And you've got a coach and you've got a leadership group where you're trying to figure out, is this guy worth it, or do we need to move on from this guy? And I found it interesting that Heupel went out of his way to say, I consulted our leadership council. So what I don't know is, was he trying to talk the leadership council into keeping him? Or was he trying to talk the leadership council into, let's just get rid of this guy, we can do without him? Because it's always tempting to try to find a way to keep a guy who is a difference maker.
I think at least in my experience, the coach brings the leadership council in and he explains to the leadership council, this is what the deal is. Now, y'all make the decision on how. And maybe Heupel went to him and said, I don't want to kick him off the team. I think he's valuable. First sort of hiccup, second chance. But there are things he needs to do. What do y'all want him to achieve before he can get back on the team?
Yeah, what do we think is fair?
Exactly.
You guys have been here every day. You're working hard.
Exactly.
He has.
You know him.
Yeah.
You know him better than I do because you're hanging around with them more than I as a head coach. What is it that y'all believe the parameters should be, or some of the guidelines should be, in order for him to get back on the team? All right, the player set these guidelines, or the coach said, this is some of the things that I'm thinking, and the player said, yay, nay. All right, add that to the list. So now there's a list. Now I take it back to the player and say, listen, we've all agreed that you are a part of this team, but because of your actions, these are the things that you have to do to get back and build whatever it is you lost with your team. And they may not be hard things, but I need to just see some consistency on some things that we haven't been seeing.
I kind of like this potentially, and we don't know how it's going to play out, but I have seen this in my past as well, where a coach will come out and he will say, so and so is suspended. And it's August. And then it's kind of funny how,
he's not suspended.
September 1st, he's reinstated. So like he never missed any games or anything. So it really is immaterial whether he's quote unquote suspended.
Well, it's
like if you're thrown off the team, that's like
that's
a final.
Big,
that's final. So it's a quasi suspension, but it seems like he's laid out, oh, you want to be on this team? Here's what the leadership council and I agree. Your peers have determined this is what it takes to come back in. Yeah, we don't know specifics of it, but we have to see how receptive Boo Carter is to this.
Well, it seems that since he hasn't been dismissed from the program, and it has nothing to do with NIL, so they tell us that he's still a part of their plans moving forward, but he must fulfill sort of these, individual things, these mandates that the team, the leadership has placed upon them. If you can do that, then we will welcome you with open arms. But if you don't, then, hey, we're going to move on without you. That's why they say you're suspended now. But hey, now is not the season. Now is just, or work up to the season. Hopefully, before we get to the season, you will have fulfilled all the requirements that we wanted you to fulfill in order to play the first game of the season.
So, the parameters are key without knowing what it's like. Is it just, hey, like I remember one time a guy was suspended. And then it was determined, this was a basketball situation where it determined the player was not going to start. And so it went from he's suspended to, well, he's not going to start. And then the first 10 minutes of the first game, he was in there. He didn't start, but he was in there in the first rotation. Yeah. So it really, the penalties, you're like, what price did he really pay for this? But
there is an initial price that you have to pay. But I mean, it happened to me in college with Nick Saban. He ended up suspending me, and I had to go home because Marcia and I were dating at the time, and she was really sick. She was in the hospital, and I had to go back and be with her. And I end up staying a little bit longer. I think I ended up just missing the next practice, where he said I could miss one practice, but because of the severity of and I didn't call. That was his whole thing. You didn't call. I knew that's where you were, but you didn't call. So it went from suspension to, all right, you ran and everything else, to, all right, you're going to be suspended for just the first half. And he suspended me instead of suspending me for the whole game, he suspended me for the first half. So there you go. So I've been through it.
I also wonder how they sort out the altercation with a teammate, because that's another thing that that's where a leadership council, they know the deal, exactly. Right? They know what happened. You don't want it to divide a locker room, and so maybe it's you got to go to these guys. You got to apologize.
You got to apologize.
Something. You got to make amends.
You never, as a team, you never want to take a on-field incident and let it bleed into the off-field. Meaning, once we get off the field, once practice is done, once we've done, it's done. It's over with. Once we walk in that locker room, it's like it's never happened. We're teammates, but in the heat of the battle, this is what goes on. If it bleeds into the locker room and you're still having, then okay, yeah, we need to talk about it. But typically, a lot of it happens on the field. After that, guys are in the in the locker room. The same two guys that were fussing and pushing, they laughing with one another. So maybe it was something that, not only happened on the field, but it bled into off the field with that same person or people, teammates.
Have you seen the movie Coach Carter?
Yep, seen Coach Carter.
Okay, so this is you can interpret this text on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. They better give him the cruise treatment from Coach Carter.
That's actually, it was Chris Lowe had another tweet about it. He said, important to remember here that the leaders on Vols football team made a pact that all players would be held accountable this year. They're the ones Carter has to win over to get back on the field, and 100% in good graces again. No more mulligans.
Okay, so does this is what I guess we'll have to wait and see. Is Carter receptive to this? Is he like, okay, deal? Like, have they talked to him, or have they just say, here's what it's going to take, and you got to come back and let us know. Are you in or are you out?
Because it goes right along with the movie, because I think there was one guy in the movie that he was talking about that was just, he was going against the grain.
Cruz, yeah.
Cruz was going against the grain, and he basically, I think he ended up kicking him off the team for a while, and he had to do some stuff to get back on the team. So yeah, it's the same thing.
Okay.
I think he had to do like 1,000 push-ups and 1,000 suicides in order to come back, and then all the guys helped out with that as well. Yeah, all the guys
ran with him. So it's just, you got the cruise treatment.
Yep. So we'll see how this plays out. Yeah. We're just starting the fall camp. We'll see how it plays out. That will be a big story over in Knoxville. When we come back, Jared Stillman's going to join us. We'll wrap things up on the home stretch. We'll get back to the Titans and the first day in pads at training camp. Stay tuned. This is DVD. Our coverage of Titans training camp is presented by Macero at 12 South and Parman Energy Group. Willie Donick and Derek Mason here with you. Adam Vingan is on vacation this week. Our final segment of the show, and then it'll be Stillman and Company starting at the top of the hour. Jared Stillman is on with us as we share our thoughts on the first day of Titans training camp. So, Jared, let's sort of pick up on where we left off. There's been a lot wondering what you have up your sleeve after yesterday. You came on pretty strong on our show, and you continued it into your show about just the being careful about overhyping Cam Ward because he's all they got. And today, clearly, he struggled. So I'm curious how that is going to play out here as he goes through the ups and downs of a rookie season.
So I just want everybody out there to know that you guys said it, not me, that Cam Ward struggled today. You guys said it, not me. That the
I think everybody said it, right?
At practice.
Does anybody really think he played well today? I mean, it was just a struggle, but it depends on where you can put that in the perspective.
So I have two big takeaways here that I wanted to jump on and start off with today. The first is I heard you guys last segment talking. Derek said, Jared even says that it feels different out in training camp. That was not a good different.
I wanted you to elaborate on your answer.
Well, it just felt different from the standpoint that Vrabel's not there anymore, and Robbie Bourne, the PR director, is not there anymore, and Haas, the equipment guy, he's not there anymore, and so it just feels different with different people, and it kind of feels like all the people that you've known forever with the Titans that are still there are all in pins and needles because I think they're afraid of getting fired, and so it just kind of had this like very sterile, very I'm trying to think of the right way to say this, like it had a very going through the motions, I'm here so I don't get fired feel to it today. That's what I would say I felt today out of training camp. That was different. The optimism of the flowers blooming and of the possibility of all 32 teams winning the Super Bowl at training camp, that does not exist at Titans training camp. It is just a sorrow of, man, let's get through the next 2 hours.
Well, I went into camp knowing that's how you guys had felt last week, one of the first practices. And even Cam Ward says what he said, it was mid, right? The first, and we were wondering, how could that be on the first day? So I came in trying to be open-minded and not listen to all that and just kind of see what I saw. And even I have to say, I'm usually the one looking for reasons why that's wrong, and we shouldn't emphasize that too much. It's not a big thing. But I didn't see the people. You need those guys who provide energy, whether it's a Jim Washburn on the coaching staff or a player or two that like to keep the energy up. And this is not with trash talking, or this is not with fights or anything extreme like that, but pumping each other up, creating a little fun competition, keeping an energy level where it needs to be. I do think it was a little low today.
I felt like when I was watching the big boys do the one-on-ones, they put 15 minutes or whatever for the period up there on the clock. And, I want to see the big guys in the pads go up against each other. I want to see how the offensive line looked. So I go down there to go watch the big guys, Simmons versus Kevin Zeitler and Arden Key versus Dan Moore. And I'm going down there to see that. And they were just lollygagging out there, getting from point A to point B. It took 3 minutes for them to get the drill started. I'm like, hurry up. Hurry up.
See, they need
Let's
you on the
go.
Staff. You could be the get back coach and the hype
man.
They need me on the staff to give everybody a reality check around there, because I am telling you, Brian Callen, I sat there with you guys. You guys, this is not Jared Stillman. I know everybody said, oh, Jared Stillman, all he is negative. That's it. It's Willie and Derek. Willie just admitted to the fact that he is always looking for the reason that the glass is half full. And Derek, I hate to say it, but Derek has had some seriously homerific takes over the years that I've had to get up his rear end about, over the time. And so Willie and Derek are sitting there with me at practice, and they're like, yeah, this wasn't very good practice today. This was, the energy wasn't very good. Cam wasn't very good. This wasn't good. So I want everybody to know, they were the ones saying it, not me, that it wasn't very good. Then I watched the videos of all the guys coming off the field and the press conferences they did. Yeah, it's a good day of practice today. And I'm like, nobody, they probably think that's good. They probably think that's good. You guys know when you go into kind of a small town or even some bigger towns where the local sports radio is just trash and you're listening to it, and you guys know what good radio is. So you listen to it and you're like, these guys suck. These guys don't know what they're doing. These guys, I'm telling you, those guys behind the mic, they think what they're doing is good. It is not good. I'm telling you, Derek, you know what good is, because not only did you play in the NFL for a long time, but you were very good in the NFL. You know what good is. You were at practice today. It was not good. They think it was good. That is a problem, is it not?
I mean, listen, yes, it would. Yes, it is a problem. But I'm not taking the problem no further than what it needs to go. I'm waiting on them to show me something opposite of what they've shown the last couple of times I've been out there. Now, one can say, well, Mason, they've shown you what they've shown you. They are who they are, and I get that part. But I do understand too that, you know, practices at times may not go the way you want to, but I want to see how they come back out the next opportunity that they have. That's my thing. And if it's bad again, then I'm going to say, in my opinion, it's bad. I do take, that you say I'm a homer, though, man. I don't think I've ever given a homer.
I didn't say you're a homer.
To that.
You have had some homerific takes. And
Just
sometimes I've been up there on a Sunday with you and Chris Sanders.
No, Jared.
And I am fighting on the side of reality with you two.
Jared, stop it, because just because I don't see it like you doesn't mean I'm a homer, man. I'm just giving it the way I see it.
I have had to defend the fact that Aaron Brewer stunk with you and Chris Sanders for so many Sundays.
He didn't stink
on end. He stunk.
He was an okay player. He was an okay player.
All right.
Last year, I had to
for
compete with you guys about L'Jarius Sneed and the validity of his quad injury.
Well, I mean, he was a quad injury.
You guys said, well, the Titans said.
Was it initially a quad injury?
Homer.
Okay, so Dr. Stillman and Coach Stillman have reared themselves during this short segment. Jared, I got one more for you. Christian Wilkins. I'm fascinated by this whole thing. Jimmy Shapiro, who always sends me emails. I don't know who he is, but he's got one of these prop services, right? He sets odds for a lot of things. Care to guess the favorite on the betting lines of where Christian Wilkins will end up now that the Raiders have cut bait on a 4-year, $110 million contract?
Vrabel.
Exactly. Is that surprising?
That's only because Vrabel said that, like in a press conference, he was asked about it. Vrabel said they'll look at it. I got to tell you, this kiss on the head thing, that seems rather incomplete in terms of the Adam Schefter report yesterday that Christian Wilkins kissed a teammate on the head, but it was like a playful kissing on the head. And then you see videos of him grabbing, the cojones of Josh Allen and Curtis Samuel when he was in college at Clemson. And it sounds like there's some there. And I don't know, man.
The Titans, by the way, are 25-1 to sign Wilkins.
But
the guy can play.
But he's dealing with a foot injury too, an ankle injury, whatever it is.
When's that stop the Titans?
He got a point there. This is a new regime,
right? But if he ends up with Vrabel,
Jarrett, it's a new regime.
But if he goes to Vrabel, I think it just adds to the intrigue of what does Vrabel have up his sleeve with New England this year? With where
we'll see.
We will see. Yeah. All right, Jared, have a great show. We'll talk to you,
gentlemen.
Later.
All right, that'll do it for us for DVD. We're back at training camp tomorrow morning for our observations, and then back here with you on the air from 11 to 2.
Be love on your people. Have a safe, blessed, and wonderful Tuesday. Peace.